Welcome to this Fair Use Fair Dealing Week 2022. It's an annual global celebration of how to practice fair use principles and how to put that to use in academic and research environment. This is an event which demystifies the fair use principles under the applicable copyright laws in India and in other international context.
Fair use is an important principle to enable us to use intellectual and creative works in our day-to-day activities. So, for example, a teacher can read and recite important passages of a textbook to their entire classroom for comprehension. A student group can put up a theatre play in their school or their university based on a published script. Filmmakers can make documentaries by stitching together pieces of video clippings. Journalists can review novels as long as they've read, purchased, bought the novel, and had a critique of it. And scholars can build on existing scholarly publications and journal articles to create new knowledge. Now, if each and every time the teacher, the student, the filmmaker, the scholar had to obtain prior permission of the author of the creative work they were using, intellectual activities would not be enabled at the pace it's required in modern life. So, the fair use principle, very briefly, allows you to use intellectual and creative work for your educational, research, personal purposes without asking for formal prior permission of the author. Because every time you create a scholarly article in a journal or a book or any kind of artwork, you have a intellectual property in it which is known as a copyright. Now, the best way to understand copyright is a bundle of rights that you have with respect to an intangible intellectual property. You can sell your property, you can lease it, you can make copies of it, you can translate it, you can perform it in public. In the same way that you can do so with traditional property, you can do this with intellectual property. The author or the owner or the creator of a copyrightable work can also license these rights to make copies, publish, translate, sell, etc. to other users or licensees as long as they ask for a permission or they can pay a fees first. So this is why permission is necessary each and every time you're using an intellectual work that has been created by an author. Similar to the practice in most countries now, fair use is recognized along with copyrights in India. So the relevant legislation is the Copyright Act of 1957, along with its rules. So copyright is recognized along with its exceptions, one of which is fair use. Now, fair use is a term we use in the United States, and fair dealing is something that we use in countries such as India. These are exceptions to copyright. So, as long as you use a creative or an intellectual work, such as a book, a journal article, etc., for your personal use, that is for research, for criticism, or for writing a review on that work, or for journalistic purposes, that is for reporting a current event, that is fair use, and you can use this work without asking for prior permission. There are other exceptions under the Indian law as well. So, for example, if you are an organization that's working for the benefit of persons with disabilities and you want to make copies of a intellectual creative work for the benefit of the people that you're serving on a non-profit basis, you can do so without asking prior permission of the author. If you're a non-commercial library and you have a hard copy of a book and now you want to make a digital copy for it because digital copy is more accessible, you can do so without asking the prior permission of the author. Similarly, in a more day-to-day example, I have purchased a computer program and I want to use it on my Apple Mac instead of the previous laptop that I was using or any other computer that I was using. I can transfer it for my own personal use and I don't need to ask the author of the computer program every time. So the Indian law does recognize fair use and the various exceptions to copyright.
Okay.
No. Fair use exception does not allow you to pirate any work. It doesn't allow you to sell any creative work for profit without the permission of the author. and you can't completely copy the work in a lot of instances. So
Okay.
sometimes you are permitted to completely copy a book if it's relevant and necessary for your educational, personal, research purposes, but not always. Well, codes of law in India have generally given guidance as to how much of a work you can use, copy, share, to the extent that it is reasonable and necessary for your educational purposes, research, personal, and non commercial objectives. Now, this depends upon a case by case scenario. So, for example, if you are a library and you want to share a textbook with your entire student body for educational purposes only, you can do so according to codes of law completely. You can completely photocopy the book and make it available to them.
Okay.
On the other hand, if you are reading or reciting extracts of a published work, you can only do reasonable extracts. You can only read and recite reasonable extracts to the public. So it depends upon a case by case scenario. But the general rule of thumb is what is necessary and reasonable for your educational purposes or research or personal purposes. Now, one of the best ways to do this is to always seek out for open access works. So, it's always a good idea to look at any disclaimers in any work that gives you an open access license, such as a Creative Commons license. That way, the author has allowed you to use the work without asking for necessarily formal prior permission, but you also don't have to pay a license fees. There could be certain conditions attached with using open access works. One of the common conditions is attribute the author. So you have to cite the name of the authors or the creators who have created that work. But also any derivative work, that is, any work you've created on the basis of that open access work, may also have to be shared on similar open access terms with other people. That is, you have to share your derivative works freely with the public, just like the original authors had shared that work with you. So open access is a great way to comply with copyright, but also make the best use of intellectual works that are available to you.
That's well put, Rupaji. As an alternative to acknowledging the copyright works, the open access movement have opened up a lot of avenues for the learning communities and different communities of practice to reuse, remix, and adopt different creative works in a legitimate way that helps to put the resource in a user's hand where one can use these resources, and it makes a whole lot of difference when a learner of any sort have access to them, and it really helps. And thanks for this wonderful time, and you demystified a lot of things that people should know as a public good.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.